Welcome to Ink and Magic, a podcast where we read and discuss the writing craft, world building, and romance of paranormal and fantasy novels.
If you love books with bite, set in worlds of magic and mayhem, then you're in the right place. My name's Nikisha Shanae. I go by Ines.
And I'm Leslie. I write as El Penelope. And welcome to the show.
Hey, Leslie.
Hey, Inez. How is it going?
It's going really well. We have read Shield of Winter, and we are finally out of the winter season. I feel like spring just was like, yeah, I see y'all when I see y'all.
Yeah, spring has been weird because it's like either 40 degrees or 80 degrees in Maryland. And I mean, that's just how it goes around here. But I feel like Shield of Winter, book 13 Inside Changeling is very apropos right now.
It's very. So this is Ivy, who is a Psy, and Vasic, who is a Psy.
Arrow.
Particularly Vasic is an arrow, and Ivy is an empath, and it is their love story.
Yes, and I've been waiting since we first met Vasic. He's one of those characters like Caleb, very similar, sort of at least personality. I mean, all the Psy men and all the arrows, and even though Caleb isn't technically an arrow, he counts. I'm here for it. I love those kind of characters. They're really cold characters, men, heroes who feel like they can't love, don't have any emotions, and they slowly melt over the course of the book.
Literally melt. He literally melted. Yeah.
Yes, he did. Into a giant puddle.
So we open this book and we learn we knew from the last book that silence was falling. Now silence has fallen.
Yeah, it's a continuation of the war, you could say. I mean, it's sort of it's a war of the Psynet against itself. It's the degradation of the Psynet. The madness is spreading. And since the Sunshine, what book was Sunshine in? Sunshine, Alaska.
It was in
Lord, I shouldn't even ask that question. Y'all know. Y'all know. Whatever book Sunshine, Alaska was in till now.
It was in Dev's book.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Right. It was because Katya had to go and find it. Nice work.
Thank you.
So, and do we get a little bit of Dev? I think we got like one.
Very little. He makes an appearance. It's a party line. Everybody makes an appearance in these books nowadays.
But they're tiny. They're not overwhelming, I think, for me. Like we get a good amount of Caleb and Sahara, and then we check in with Sasha and Lucas. We see Mercy. We see people, but there are times when you get to book 13 in a series or in other series where I have felt completely overwhelmed by checking in with every single other couple.
Yeah,
and I don't feel overwhelmed here. I feel like we're stopping by, doing drive-by waves of certain people and mentions of other people.
See, I felt overwhelmed. I felt like we got introduced to the hero. We got introduced to the heroine. I can't remember. We had their meet cute, and then there was just party line. For me, it was just party line for a minute.
I mean, this is a slow burn. So whenever you're melting ice, I think it takes a little while. We're not getting the insta love from totally cold arrow to madly in love. That just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And so, we have to go on a journey. I personally didn't feel like that. It was party line, but I see what you're saying. We do have to meander a little bit. They have to get to know each other, then they have to slowly have the feelings develop. And on Ivy's side, she's, immediately attracted. And so that builds and builds. And I just love watching that ice melt. I love from Vasic's perspective, looking for, okay, when are the moments where he notices, the moments he's always there. As it progresses, I just think that's fascinating.
So let's talk about the reason why they had to meet. As we said, silence has fallen, and Caleb said, "Okay, I'm gonna save the net because my girl needs the net. So y'all get a reprieve."
It's the only reason.
It's the only reason. And the arrows are still like, this is our job. It is our job to protect. No longer to protect silence, but it is our job now to protect the net. How are we going to do that? What is going to be the solution? And it looks to everyone like, well, at least to the arrows, like that the empaths are the key to negate the disease that is taking over the net.
Yeah, I think Caleb has the plan initially, and he goes to Aiden and he gets the support of the arrows. And because of what was happening in the previous book, they've been able to identify these empaths. because in book one, nobody knew an empath existed, and Sasha was the first one to come out.
Mhm.
And so Caleb has this plan to gather them together in one location, and so they can learn how to heal the net, like figure some stuff out.
Yeah.
And nobody really knows what it looks like because they don't know much about empaths. So they end up getting some land in Dark River territory.
Well, I think it was at the border between Dark River and Snow Dancer,
Right. Okay. Yes.
which confused me. I didn't understand why they needed to be in the territory when they were going to be working in the Signet.
I think they needed to be, and I don't remember exactly, but it's like they wanted some place where the factions of Psy who really want silence and hate the fall of silence are attacking empaths. So they know that the empaths are going to be in danger and the changelings will protect them. But they also want to be in a location without a lot of other Psy in that net. So
I
they
may
want
have
to in
missed
sort of
that.
like an empty portion of the Psy net so that they could see what the darkness is doing and figure out a way. I think it was important.
Yeah, I may have missed that because I do remember that the the disease
Hmm.
was staying away from them.
Right. I think we learned that the net mind protects empaths and has hidden them for a long time because there's a lot of them, as we find out. There's way more than anybody thought. And they've been protected and hidden and suppressed. And so I think that's part of it too.
So Ivy, our heroine, is one of these empaths, and they tried to rehabilitate her, but pretty much her parents saved her. Parents who were silent saved her.
Now, what's the difference between rehabilitation and reconditioning? I get them confused. One of them is like you turn into a zombie. Ivy had the non-zombified version, still really bad. Happened when she was 16 because she had some kind of break. And yeah, even though her parents are technically silent, they stayed together for her as a unit, whatever they call that thing,
Yeah.
as a parental unit, and they were down for their daughter and they protect her even to this day. And so they actually moved off the grid with a bunch
Mhm.
of other sort of quote unquote reject Psy to live very quietly and simply on a farm, on an apple farm or something somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they had a community. And so it was like, yes, Psy, even though they were still technically silent, they were showing love and proving it with their actions.
So it's fascinating because even though when we first come into this world, we really just know there's silence. There's
Mhm.
silence. There's humans. There's changelings, and even Sasha doesn't really know that there are people that there's Psy out there who have basically broken off. Like we meet the Lauren family pretty late in that first book, and we see that their family unit.
Mhm.
We later will meet Dev
Forgotten.
the Forgotten, thank you. And
They're human. They're not Psy.
they're human with Psy
Blood. Yeah.
heritage.
Yeah.
And Psy and Changeling heritage.
Mhm.
They're like the mixed race faction.
I guess so. I guess they're kind of like
Yeah.
bi or triracial maybe.
Yeah. And and then we see that some of the arrows have broken off.
Right,
And
yeah.
then we're seeing other people have broken off. Like, and not everybody agreed with this in the past and in the present, and they were breaking off. I thought that was really interesting. And then, yeah, there's basically this compound, this farm where Ivy's parents and their community have broken off, and they were prepared. They were like, if there is an infiltration, we got this.
Mhm.
So then here comes Vasic.
Yeah, they got backup plans. So yeah, Vasic was assigned, Vasic's whole problem is all the things he's done as an arrow that he was taken to become an arrow at 4 years old
Mm.
and tortured like they all were, and then became you know his issue wasn't so much killing people. It was sort of by the end we feel like we find out that it was covering up these deaths. Like he has a lot of guilt over all the various horrible things he was made to do as an arrow, and I guess he thought he was doing it for the right reasons, but it still weighed down his soul. So he and his best friend Aiden knows that Basic's kind of a ticking time bomb. He's kind of got a death wish. He doesn't think he should be here. And so he's just running out the clock. And so Aiden gives him this duty to like be a one-on-one protector for Ivy, one of the empaths that's coming into this experiment. I think they had like not 9 or 12. I read this book like a week and a half ago, so my memory is not going to be great on it. There's
I'm
some
gonna remember those numbers anyway. So
some number of empaths that they're going to like have to do this experiment and see if they can do anything about the darkness in the net. And so he takes on this duty. He's like, fine. And then he meets Ivy and he teleports. And Vasic is this true teleporter. He can teleport anywhere. And so he pops in on her and her dog, can't forget about her dog
Oh,
Rabbit,
no,
who
her
is
doggy.
actually Rabbit stays. One of the things that I talk about when I do workshops is a lot of times when you put a dog or a cat into a book, if you don't have anything specific for them to do, they just disappear. And it's
Yeah,
like, well, what happened to the dog? Well, you have to remember to keep checking in with the dog. And Rabbit is a constant presence in the book. So,
yeah, is a key sub-character
yeah.
that affects change in Vasic.
Yeah. He's like a foil kind of.
Mhm,
He has purpose, a
mhm,
personality, and a
mhm.
role.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it was a very smart decision on Nalini Singh's part to put the dog named Rabbit
Yes.
in there, and Rabbit's, the arc that we hear about of how Rabbit came to be mirrored what's happening both with Ivy and I think also with Vasa, because Rabbit came in wounded, and he
Yeah.
fought and clawed his way back to health.
Right, just like Ivy after her reconditioning slash
Mhm.
rehabilitation, whichever R word it is, she was broken and her parents nurtured her and brought her back to life, and she does the same thing for Vasic when
Yeah,
she's melting his ice.
yeah, absolutely, that is absolutely what happens. Um, but an interesting thing is the stakes of this book. Because you're like, okay, well, why don't you just let the Cyanide just eat everything and don't let the diseases make everybody zombies? Or why don't we do one of the things that Caleb thought about doing, which is just like let's excise the part of the net that
Mhm.
is infected, but you're gonna lose a lot of people.
Yeah, and so because everything Caleb does is for Sahara,
Right.
she's like, "No, I don't want to
Let's
do
not
that."
do that.
So he finds another way. And eventually, and later in the book, they find out that wouldn't have worked anyway because it's just so woven in, it's
Yeah.
marbled in. There was no way they
It's
could.
in the next generation, I think they said at one point.
Yeah, because at one point it's like, well, maybe it's just the kids, save the kids and everybody else, but you couldn't even
No,
do that.
no.
The other thing, other family, we have the return of Zia Zen, who was a
Mac
Shia's
Daddy!
supposed baby daddy, Mac Daddy, who is actually Basic's great
Yeah.
grandfather
Yes,
by blood, and that was a cool plot twist.
it was.
That Basic has this person in his life that he does care about, he does respect, and that is also a person who is a connection for him. He doesn't have very many connections. Now, Zia we find out, is 120 years old. He is
Yes,
old enough to remember the beginning of Silence, which is
yes.
also really interesting, I think.
Mhm.
And he was in love with an E before Silence. He was in love with an empath. Like, just let's link it all together. Let's bring it all these
She did
connections.
really good. Yeah, good job, Nalini Singh, linking this all together. Um, One of the things that was interesting to me, and I started to peep it in Zia Zen's wife's letters to him, is we've heard this before that empaths can be emotionally manipulative,
Mm.
and you could see some of that in her letters where she was like, "I'm mad at you, but I still want you to take care of this and do this and do this. Don't forget that I'm mad at you."
Yeah, it just shows like, sigh before silence. We're just normal. Like they
They
just
were
had the
very normal
same.
people.
But the interesting, yeah, that thing about E's being emotionally manipulative, because up until now, we've heard is that E's can't possibly kill anyone because it would, boomerang back on them. They would feel it. But we do learn that there is a downside. There is sort of a nefarious side to E's that is the potential that they could manipulate you to do things that you don't want to do, and they can really wrangle another person's emotions. So they have to be very careful about that and be very
Mhm.
intentional. I
Yeah.
think that's why that a lot of the entire time, the changelings are on their guard. We have several scenes where Caleb has proposed this thing, like, "Can we use this land adjacent to yours, or it's technically on your land to do this thing?" And Sasha is involved in the negotiations, and um, I think that showing the different sides of empaths, and so showing that they don't really know exactly what they can and can't do, and the empaths themselves, like Ivy at the beginning, doesn't know she's an empath. They'd
Yeah.
never heard of this designation before, so it's all new ground that they're walking.
So they bring this group of empaths together, and the changelings have basically a fence around them, and then an outer fence, and then another fence. They're like, don't try us.
Do not cross this line.
Don't cross the line. And again, I have to come back to Rabbit because when Rabbit meets Hawk and in his wolf form, Rabbit's like, oh, I gotta go. I gotta go with him. It's so cute. And poor Ivy, she's like, can you please make sure that if my dog does cross the boundaries, that you don't hurt my dog.
Right?
Poor thing.
I think, also from the beginning that when Ivy meets Vasic, she's trying to nurture him. She's offering food and drink even though she's afraid when he pops in, and then, yeah, they get to the camp, I guess we can call it the camp because they built cabins for them, and I don't know that they even know what they're really supposed to be doing at that point.
I didn't.
But, yeah, they go to the cabin, and we've had a couple of interactions pre-cabin with Ivy and Vasic because I don't think they get to the cabin till, like, chapter 11.
Yeah, it takes a minute.
But they're still there doing that little dance, that little, like, one tiny steps forward towards each other.
Mhm. Mhm. They are. We should probably bring up Vasic's gauntlet, which took
Mhm.
me a minute to understand that it was a thing, a device, because I always thought in my head it's like you run the gauntlet, which I thought
Oh.
was like an obstacle course, and I was thinking all the time, like, is he running an obstacle course
Oh,
every time?
wow.
I didn't get it.
It's more like Wonder Woman's gauntlets, like, like the ching, da-ding, ching.
I don't and I was a kid with the original Wonder Woman, and I don't think I did not put that together.
Mm.
Anyway, he has basically a Wonder Woman gauntlet on his forearm.
It's an embedded iWatch, right? Apple Watch is what I think of it as, like a big embedded Apple Watch in his forearm that is causing lots of problems.
Yeah.
'Cause he did the experiment when he had this death wish, and he didn't care if he lived or died, and, hey, now it's killing him, but now he actually wants to live.
Yeah, of course.
Of
And
course.
it's getting worse as he finds this woman that he wants to be with. So he has this gauntlet on his arm that can do all these amazing things, but yes, it is also killing him. Um, and so but they get there. And I know we said this is a slow burn. And the slow burn of it I understand that it had to be a slow burn. These are 2 Psy, and we're gonna be in the silent world for a minute. I know the next book is at least 1 Psy. I think the heroine is a Psy in the
I
second
haven't
and
even peeked yet, so I'm not sure.
and then I remember the name of the book after that is like Silver Silence, and I remember that Silver is
Caleb's
Caleb's.
assistant?
So there's gonna be some silence going on for a minute, and I get that, some Psy love going on, and you're probably gonna need for it to take a little bit of time because they have to understand how to feel. I get it. And I didn't think that I was gonna enjoy having the slow burn, the Psy slow burn.
Mhm.
But she did some interesting things. Like the first things that one of some of the first things that Nalini Singh did, she started to have Ivy lower her shields and
Mhm.
let Vasic in. And that I felt like that's intimate. That's very intimate when you allow somebody to shield you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the mental shields. Well, I mean, she had to be an empath, like, I think for Vasic, he
Mhm.
had to be with an empath. Now I'm interested to see who Aiden ends up with, what kind of person, but, like, it just made so much sense. So, without even knowing it, like, she isn't really silent at the
No,
beginning, and
no.
so she has less far to go. Like, the same thing when we had Katya, and Sahara too, like, when you have these
Mhm.
characters, they've already kind of crossed that line. So we're not dealing with 2 Vasics 'cause that's a slow but that's
That's
like a
yeah.
I don't know how that would even happen.
I
Maybe
don't
she'll
know.
do
I
it.
don't either.
We'll have to see.
So she lowers her shields for him, and then they start all this telepathic flirting, which I enjoyed.
Yes.
Even the part where so at first, it's like words, they're flirting with words, but then they start flirting, at least Ivy starts flirting with images. I was calling this the not revenge porn
It's
because
just a nude selfie, basically,
she
and
sends him a nude selfie
mentally.
mentally of herself. And he pauses and he's like, "Did you just make a mistake?"
Alright? It's like he's short circuiting, actually.
He short circuits. And he's like, "Okay, I'm with this. This is good." And then he asks for more. At some point, he asks for more.
Right, yeah. Like, at first, she's like, "Okay, is he going to respond to this?" Because she knows she has to take it slow. She realizes that he's very damaged, but
Yes.
she's pushing it.
She
Um,
does. She is because she can feel she's trying to accelerate.
and it says
His
he
own.
literally falls down in the snow when he gets the image,
Yeah, I forgot that. Yeah.
and then he thanks her. He doesn't know what to do. It's great. That's a
It
great
is
scene.
great. It is great. So she lowers her shields. They do the she sends and starts sending him selfies. Um, they share a kiss, and it's taking chapters for anything to happen, and you completely understand. But what I loved is that Judd
Mhm.
is basically Dr. Ruth in this whole series now. He's the one that they go to, and they're like, "So, how does this work, and how does that work, and what do I do in this situation?" He
Yeah.
is Dr. Ruth.
And he's also like the dad because like these guys haven't had sex before, and yeah,
And so as they again, they don't do anything for a long time. But as they start to, make out a bit, there's a little trick to what how Vasic is experiencing.
he gets overwhelmed and
Yes, he
he
does.
randomly teleports them places.
Random places like Judd would break things.
Yes, Judd broke every piece of furniture. Basic will take you into the desert or into the mountaintop or wherever, and then right back. Like he is not in control of himself. He is
Oh.
just so and like he till the end, really. I think this is still
Mhm.
going to be an
Mhm.
ongoing problem.
Mhm. But Judd had a suggestion which was to divert the energy, and he
Hmm.
told him to fill a tub with water and
Yeah,
to try to divert some of the energy into the water.
and like make it boil or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is fascinating. I mean, it's really cool. Like, one thing I had written earlier on that Basic actually teleported out of the womb,
Yeah.
which was like, so he's just super powerful. So yeah, he just can't control it. He just gets excited and he doesn't know what to do with himself. But yeah, and then their whole progression is very sweet. You know, it's like he sleeps on her floor and she has nightmares and she feeds him and he gives her his coat. And it's just like little things I thought were
Mhm.
very sweet. So for me, the slow burn was just all about the sweetness
Mhm.
of them coming together.
And the last thing before, the actual Balchikawawa is that, so he was shielding her,
Hmm.
but then she has to shield him with her empathy as they actually go and they start to fight this war. She has to bring a shield around him when they're out and about.
Because yeah, the external plot is they're mounting like progressively bad outbreaks of the crazy virus. I mean, like people Psy are just going crazy, murdering everyone or attacking
Mhm.
everyone around them. So it happens in big cities, like they go to New York at one point, and because of the degradation of the net, it just spreads. They'll have just an outburst of violence, and anybody who's nearby, changeling, human, other side, children, babies, are just caught up in it. So there's all these horrible, horrific acts of violence that then Caleb and the Arrows have to go and help, and the E's go and try to see if they can help, and it gets very it's hard. That stuff is really
It
difficult.
was very hard to like one, this was a slow burn. Two, it was a love story during a time of war, which made it very difficult for me because there was a lot of violence. There was a lot of
This is
violence.
book 13 in a very violent series.
True, but there was a when you're with the changelings, there's just so much fun being had. There's
Mm,
already the found family there, and there's already the rituals that they do. There's so
mhm,
there's some there's a soft place to land.
mhm,
There weren't a lot of other than Rabbit the dog, there weren't a lot of soft places, and you could see them making the connections, like, you could see the empaths making connections with each other, you
mhm.
could see the empaths making connections with their arrows, and so
Yeah,
you could see this group coming together, but it was just and you also saw the connections that were already there with some of the arrows, where it was like loyalty, they had each other's backs no matter what, so you
mhm,
saw that, but there was in a book that was this hard, that you are in the trenches of the war,
mhm.
and there weren't a whole lot of soft places for me. It became
Okay.
hard, and I had to take a lot of breaks.
Oh, really? See, I didn't have that reaction at all. Because for me, whenever Vasic and Ivy were together, that was the soft place. Their
Mm.
growing connection and seeing him, I just keep saying melt, but, like, seeing him just thaw was the soft place for me, and I just really was able to have that break from and then the violence would happen, and then they would come back together, and then something else would happen, they'd come back together and get a little bit closer.
So another thing that's happening in this war, because we talked about how Vasic, he's so powerful, he just needs an image to teleport. He
Mhm.
does the dumbest thing that I think that anybody could ever do in this book. Do you know what I'm about to talk about?
I think so, yes.
Oh, I felt physically uncomfortable when this man, Ivy, gets hurt and he needs Sasha stabbed. So what does he do? He locks onto Sasha's face, the image that he has of her, and he teleports. Where does this man teleport into, Leslie?
Her house.
With her and Lucas and their baby.
He almost dies because obviously Lucas is not really here for that.
I felt it in my bones. I had to set the book down and just
Oh,
was
really?
like, that was dumb. Why did
Well,
you
it wasn't dumb. It was desperate. He was like, hey, listen, the consequences are going to happen, but Ivy needs Sasha, and I'm going to do whatever it takes.
He said that, and Lucas is like, if you ever.
Because I think Sasha was breastfeeding at the time, or she had the baby. Something was happening.
Yeah, and they turned the baby's face away because they knew that if he saw an image of her, he could then find her, and like, I'm not interested in her.
Right.
It's all about Ivy. And
one
Lucas
interest.
was like, don't you dare do this again. And Vasic's like, if this happens again to Ivy, I'm going to do this again.
And Lucas is like, well, just come to me and I will deal with it. And it's like, all right.
And he's
fine.
like, but he was like, no, you are not always with Sasha. He was making the most logical decisions about I'm sorry, it was suicidal. Suicidal.
But that's love, right?
I still feel uncomfortable thinking about it.
I see. I can tell. That's so interesting.
Yes.
Like, Vasic is just going to do whatever needs to be done. Damn the consequences. And that is who you want on your side.
Yeah. Right. So as the story progresses and they're getting closer, and his gauntlet is failing him and like causing him like physical and mental anguish, he starts to put out feelers. Like, he's like, I want to live now. What do I do? So he goes to Granddaddy, and Granddaddy's like, I'm going to take care of this.
Yes.
Because
Ziazen for the win.
So Ziazen, well, Vasic knows the person who put this in them, they disappeared.
The person who developed the technology disappeared. Yeah. Well, he was actually, and I think we had seen him in a previous book. We just didn't know who it was. Like, he was saved by a changeling in a previous, but I remember the scene where there was a character.
No way.
Something crazy was happening, and he got, I think Vasic actually saved him. Didn't know who it was. Like, somebody needs teleporting. He teleported him, got him, took him to the hospital, and left. So that actually was.
Remember this? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, one of the changing books. So yeah, Samuel Wayne, and since then he had been in some kind of attack or something happened, and so he was like sick or in a coma, like PTSD. Something was going on with him that he wasn't mentally all there, and they weren't sure that he was going to be able to.
And Faith's dad actually took him in to one of his facilities.
Right. So Zia then calls Anthony Kriakis and Anthony's like, hey, yeah, I got him.
The older men in these books, oh my gosh, they're perfection. Right. So the man's name is Sam Rain, and he's like in and out. He's in and out of lucidity.
And he's a genius, and he did this thing, and so he's the only person who has any hope of being able to remove the gauntlet that is slowly killing Vasic, but he is just not all. His faculties aren't all there, I think. Mm-hmm.
And so he's introduced. We meet him, and they're like, help. And he's lucid for a minute, and he's looking at it, and he's like, come back tomorrow
and bring the dog.
And bring the dog. But then I felt like Sam became the dog, where he was just off the page for like chapters, and it was beyond tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Well, they come back, and by the time they come back, and the dog has been injured, so they can't bring the dog. And then he's like, I can't do this. Like, he just puts him off. And they're like, for the next dozen chapters or so, he's not there, and they kind of check in with him off page, but it's just set up so that he's the final hope, but they're not sure he can actually pull it off. So there's kind of these two competing main plot lines by the end, where there's Vasic and his gauntlet because he's going to die, and then the actual net still being destroyed, and the E's aren't sure how they can fix it. It's sort of like a mystery almost. They're getting clues here and there. They're trying to put the puzzle pieces together. Sasha comes in, Alice Eldridge, who's I forgot that she woke up. She's awake, living with the wolves, but still doesn't have her memories. So she
She
is
has
a
flashes too, like, all the
right.
geniuses keep having flashes.
Yeah, genius is a tough thing. So there, these are the two things. Can we solve both of these puzzles in time to stop the carnage and to save Vasic's life?
Mhm. What was interesting to me, because again, sometimes you just this stuff just becomes real. So that's why the war was really bothering me.
Mm,
But also, like at any moment, like Psy were just losing their minds.
yeah.
And part of me, because the human world that we live in, I was thinking that at some point they're gonna round up all the Psys. The humans and changes, they're gonna round up all the
Like an
Psys. I
internment
was
camp or something?
I was waiting for that to happen.
Really?
I
Interesting.
was. And then everybody would just go up at their every day until another breakout came, and I was
Well,
like,
there
"Mm,
was some residual violence, like, there was, like, mentions in the book, you don't see it in a scene, but of, I guess, probably humans or changelings being like, "We are tired of these Psy losing their minds and murdering everybody," so
yeah,
they would have some violence against Psy, but that wasn't as big a theme as it could have been. I agree that, like, another version of this book would have had a lot of more, like, racism against the Psy for
should've been
being so
harder."
violent. But I think that Psy are so powerful that it would be difficult to just, like, round them up like Japanese
Mhm.
or, put them in internment camps because they're controlling so many businesses and so much of the money, and they're the ones who are healthy are still very, very mentally powerful.
Yeah. Whew, but for me, I wrote a note that this is, especially when they go to New York, because at some point while they're on Changeling Land, they're like, "We the infection is still keeping away from us. We need to go to ground zero," which of
Mhm.
course is New York City.
Right. Well,
So
they're
they
different places, but yeah, Ivy goes to New York.
and she goes there, and we see some of the tactics that she tries out. She forces them all to stop and meditate for a few seconds. I loved that. So they keep trying out different things. They try to emotionally manipulate people. They try to spread, peace
Calm,
and
yeah.
calm over people, but they can't hold it
Mhm,
for
and it
very
hurts
long.
them. It ends up draining Ivy. I think that's why she got sick, and Vasek had to risk life and limb to go see Sasha.
It felt to me, I wrote, it's this is like a Marvel movie level of destruction, this infection. Like
Mm,
things were just crashing down, people were dying.
mhm.
It was a
It
lot.
got bad. And then they find out that Jaya, who is one of the other empaths, like the empaths have different abilities. So Jaya is one that can awaken comatose people or communicate with the comatose because after the sort of illness comes over the side, if they survive, they are put into comas and then they usually die. So some of the E's can communicate and bring people out of these comas. Um, I think Ivy is like a 9 point something gradient on as an empath, and even with that strength, she can't um, push out calm in a way that works to calm down these situations. And so Sasha comes out to New York also to try to help with these, like every day, or there's multiple
Mhm.
attacks or whatever you want to call these things every day.
I got nervous for a minute that Sasha was gonna pick up the heroine mantle and basically come to the
Mm.
rescue in Ivy's book. It's like, "Don't do that, don't do that."
Yeah, I thought she was going to come to figure everything out because it seemed like
Mhm,
she was on the path because she knows more than anybody else.
mhm.
That's why they need her. But it turns out, Alice had something that was helpful, and a couple, and Sasha had, but they all have a piece to the puzzle.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
Ivy is the one with Sahara's help, because Sahara is doing research because they
Mhm.
do find a couple of people, not E's, who are apparently immune. That's what it seems like, who are protected. And so then the big question is why? And so finally, between Ivy and Sahara and Sasha, they figure out that they get the honeycomb protocol,
Yeah,
essentially, is what they call it, which is like
yeah.
you have to be connected emotionally to an E. An E can have their own little mini network, like a node on the network
Mhm.
that protects other side. And that's why there's so many E's, because we need them all to connect to as many people as they can. And that will protect them from the darkness, that the disease in the signet.
It made me think of, the rainbow net that Sasha saw when she bonded with
Lucas?
thank you, 'cause I was thinking the wrong name. When she bonded with Lucas, and, they also had they also the bonding, with Judd, and Brenna, there was a different bond there too. So there was, I
They're
feel like,
connecting into these changeling
yeah,
networks.
that seems to be the thing as well. Is I feel like the themes of this book is all about connection.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
with silence, we try to silence, to literally silence all of that, to silence
Mhm.
our emotions, and that's the wrong answer. The right answer is going to be that you need to reach out to the found family. You need to reach out and you need to connect to people.
Definitely, yeah. Because Ivy realizes that through Vasic, she's connected to a bunch of arrows,
Mhm.
and then when she goes to meet some other arrows, like she only has a maximum number of connections, so she'll lose a few of the outliers, but when other people sort of, and it feels like it has to be some sort of emotional connection, because the guy who was immune is because he had a close friend and neighbor who was an E, and even though they didn't know that they were E's, that person was protecting him. So it is actually fascinating. It's all, yeah, it's about the chosen family in addition to
Mhm.
uh, blood family ties. Because so often in these books, especially with the Psy, the blood family is useless. So it really is about the found family and the people that you choose and the people that you want to protect.
Again, I'm treating these like these are real people, and I'm like, "How 100 years ago did you not see this?"
Yeah, she thought that you could just kill all the E's, which is what they thought at the beginning, and nothing would happen.
I mean, I do remember that it came from a place of desperation, like,
Right.
it was going in the wrong opposite direction. They had kids killing each other, they had wives killing husbands and vice versa. It was brutal.
But I do wonder, like, why was that happening if the E's, did something
No,
happen then that affected the E's? Because it seems like the E's should have protected them from that all the way through, you know?
I don't
I'm
know.
sure we'll get to it and further on in the series, like, because they have to solve the original problem that Silence was supposed to solve.
Mhm.
If Silence is gone now, they're still gonna have the higher instances of mental illness and serial killers and all of that.
Yeah.
And is there something else that was missing or that was removed that is that final solution? That is
I'm
interesting.
glad I don't have to solve this problem.
I know, right? But I feel like that must have been whatever this is was in Nalini Singh's mind for 30 years. Like, she has known it. She's going somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. We trust you.
Mhm. By now, yeah. So, okay, we didn't talk about the sexy times of TK. Well, we did sort of, but, like, TK sex is also we should talk about, okay, so he does get his gauntlet fixed.
Yes.
Samuel Raines comes through in a clinch at last moment,
The last
and
moment.
but he loses his arm, so gets the gauntlet taken off, but he is down to one arm, and so, he's lost his hand, and now the sex happens with TK, which is always fun to see. Judd liked to do that, and now Vasic, hey.
Hey,
Caleb, I guess, too. Yeah, Caleb, too. Like, all the TKs, like, why not? If you have it, if that's an ability that you have,
go
then
for it.
why leave it on the table?
Leave it on the table. Oh my god.
So we get the honeycomb protocol, which is rolled out very quickly, and then all the outbreaks stop. People in the comas wake up. The disease in the Cynet shrinks, but we still have some knuckleheads who are like, "No, I don't want the solution to this problem. I want silence," and they refuse to join a honeycomb, which is just like, why? But there's always people like that
There are
who
always people like that. They're always, yeah,
don't care about their own self-interest.
yeah.
And then Ivy gets to represent the empaths in the ruling coalition. So so far we have Sasha's mother, Nikita, Anthony, and Caleb are basically have taken the place of the old council. They're now a ruling coalition. So now Ivy, I guess Caleb asked Ivy to represent the empath, and she was like, "I'm just not going to be like a dictator of empaths." But she gets them together, they vote her in, and they figure out how to make it work. So she is part of the government of the Psy now, like officially. And that's a big come up.
Yeah, yeah. And I do know that we're moving into, something called the Trinity Accords.
Is that something we know about now?
I just peeped it out, like, this is, like, the agreement. I'm guessing, haven't read it yet, but I'm
Mm.
guessing this is, like, the Psy, the human, and the changeling, like,
Oh,
this is the agreement.
like a treaty.
Yeah, I think this is coming up in the next book, the Trinity, something about the Trinity Accords.
Okay, sounds good. I have not peeked. No
I know.
spoilers for
I
me.
peek. Once I've finished, I peek. Like,
And it's
what's coming next?
right. And it's like, I know it's Aiden and I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, I love the fact that the empaths and the arrows have a strong connection. And I
Mhm.
think because for the arrows to find humanity, they need to be with someone, either an empath or someone who's very empathic. And one of the last things in the book is like a declaration from Ivy as the head of the empaths about, this is how we treat arrows. They'll protect us, and we have to make sure we don't manipulate them. We have to protect them as well. And it's worth it. Like my relationship has proven that it's worth it. And then you get all these arrows who are like, oh wait, maybe I can have something too. And I love that so much. They're all like, oh, can I fall in love too? Can I be not silent anymore? They're like little kids, and it's just adorable. And I want many more arrow stories to come.
We're gonna get some more arrow stories.
Yeah, I imagine those are fun to write, but maybe just because it's my own personal catnip.
Yeah, this needs to be your next character, Leslie. You need to have an arrow like character.
Right? Yeah, like a very cold, very emotionless character who finds love
Had any of those?
slowly. I write cinnamon rolls primarily. But it's a good challenge because it's not my skill set, but I would love to push and be able to write this kind of hero because I do love to.
Because you love it.
I do. It's my
Love
thing.
it.
It's my favorite thing. So yeah, we end with a wedding. They get married in the apple orchard, or what is this? Am I remembering this correctly?
I do not remember this
Some
part.
kind of farm, whatever she's farming. All the arrows come except for the ones on duty around the world, and they're like the extended family. They're going to be dropping by for tea and scones and to be silent and cold and hopefully warm up with the heat of Vasic and Ivy's love. And I'm here for it.
Beautiful, Leslie.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
We can thank Nalini. We should talk about our schedule really briefly. So we are going to read the next 2 books, which finishes up season 1
Oh yeah,
of
right.
Side Changing. And then we have a busy summer of travel and whatnot. So we're going to take a little bit of a season break in between seasons 1 and 2 of Side Changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so make sure to check the website for the due dates. But just to let you know, we're going into Aiden's book, and then is Silver's book after that?
Silver. I think it's Silver Silence or something like that.
Okay, yes. As you know, I have not peeked, so
We're
I have no knowledge of this. I'm very unprepared. But yeah, we're going to go through season 1 in a normal schedule, and then stay tuned for announcements about when season 2 will drop with more books the next season.
Yes.
I know there's a new release coming up this in July, I believe.
We won't be ready for it.
No, we're behind, but we're going to acknowledge it, and like we're going to get there one day.
Speaking of one day, has there been any everyday magic happening in your life, Leslie?
Yes. So I was, as we're recording, I just came back from Seattle. I did an event called the Fantasy Romance Tea Party, or that's not what it was called, but it was like steamy in Seattle, but it was a fantasy romance tea party. It was me and author Melissa Marr. It was held by Clarion West, and it was lovely. It was at the Arboretum in Seattle, which is this beautiful place with all these plants and flowers. We were outside, everyone dressed up and had a tea party, and we talked about fantasy romance, and it was magical. And then that night was the Northern Lights. It was this solar storm that happened all around the world. Of course, I was very much asleep because it was 12:30. I have a cousin out there. My cousin, my uncle live in Seattle, and they were texting me at 12:30, but it was 3:30 my time, so I was not awake to see the Northern Lights. But I lived vicariously through them and enjoyed their photographs. I've always wanted to see the Northern Lights. Like, I'm actually upset that I missed it, but I could not have stayed awake after a day of travel and a tea party. Very exhausting, very fun tea party. But yes, the pictures that I saw, and people all over the world. I saw people in England, and apparently you could see them here. Could you see them in DC? I don't know. It was raining here.
I didn't, and I had no clue what was happening.
Yeah, my mom said it was raining here, so it wasn't really visible in this area. But yeah, that was definitely some everyday magic. And even though I slept through it, I feel like the solar rays, came through my soul and lifted me up a little bit. What about you?
I feel like mine's a little bit of a cheat because my son and my daughter, my kids are about to flee the nest, and I'm very excited about it. But we've just been doing a couple of things together, and we all went. We had a movie night, and we went and we saw The Fall Guy, and I wasn't sure if they were gonna like it. They weren't sure if they were gonna like it, and we were laughing at the same jokes. It was just a fun little family moment. The movie. and at some point, Leslie, you and I just need to just talk about this film because it was a perfect chick flick at the same time as it was a perfect like buddy like shoot 'em up kind of film, and they
Mm,
were woven seamlessly together. So my
nice.
daughter who likes chick flicks and my son who likes the action stuff, they were both so incredibly entertained, and we just had a really fun time, and we just talked about it afterwards, and it was just nice to just hang out with the fam.
Family bonding over a movie
Mhm.
that's perfect for everyone.
You're
It is
perfect.
rare that you get that movie that hits everybody's buttons.
Everybody.
I love it. Yay.
So, anyway, we hope that you guys are watching something amazing or having some great family bonding. We want to thank you so much for joining us and let us know what you think. You can leave a comment on YouTube with your thoughts on the episode. You can share it with a friend who loves romance, and please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
And please also check out our book schedule on our website, inkandmagic.net, so that you can read along with us whenever we're reading these books. And we will see you the next time.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.